Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of Trapped by Love. I'm your host, Emma Carrington. This podcast covers cases of domestic abuse and domestic homicide. So if that's not the kind of content you're looking for, I completely understand. Thanks for stopping by. My aim in covering these cases is to honour the victims of these crimes and to get their stories out there in the hopes of warning others who may face similar situations. So in saying that, I mean absolutely no disrespect to any of the victims or their loved ones. I've done my very best to thoroughly research these cases and to get the details as accurate as possible. The hope is that the more people who recognise the red flags and warning signs of abuse and abusive relationships, the less prevalent these cases will be in the future. Knowledge is power, and we need to know what to be on the lookout for so we can protect ourselves and each other. I'd also like to ask you a quick favour. Would you leave a 5-star review of Trapped by Love on your favourite podcast directory? It seems so simple, but it really helps us out. And don't forget to subscribe while you're there, because a new episode comes out every Friday. Thanks. Now let's go ahead and get into this week's case. Actually going to stop right here and say I am really sorry if you can hear the background noise of the rain, because it's supposed to be summer. However, it is teeming and my recording space has a tin roof, so there may be some background pitter-patter. So I apologise for the rain, but today's case is our first out of the UK, so it may be quite fitting, and it is that of Molly McLaren. Molly McLaren was 21 years old in 2015, studying fitness at Kent University. She also worked part-time as a sales assistant at Ted Baker. She was a young, fun-loving lady with a great group of friends who she was fiercely loyal to. Everywhere she went, Molly made friends. She was beautiful and outgoing. She was the life of any party and always had a smile on her face. Molly met her best friend Amy while working at Ted Baker, and after a time Molly opened up to her about her mental health and her struggles with bulimia. This was a surprise to Amy because Molly always seemed happy and upbeat. She hadn't realised she'd been struggling the whole time that they'd been working together. But not one to wallow in her situation, Molly had started a fitness blog and was set on inspiring other people who may have been through similar situations as she had. She wanted to help and encourage people to take control of their lives and feel better about themselves. She was using her own experiences to help educate and empower others. In 2016, she'd settled into uni and she took to Tinder looking to find someone to share her life with. Molly wasn't someone to have a man in her life just because it was what everyone else was doing. So she'd never really had a serious relationship. She was looking for a real connection, and that's what she thought she had found with 24-year-old Josh Stimson. Molly took things slowly, and the pair of them chatted for a few months online before meeting. Josh lived only 9 miles away, and after sharing so much over text and on the phone, Molly felt they had a lot in common. They both enjoyed fitness and they both had their struggles with depression and anxiety. Josh told Molly that he suffered from bipolar disorder and she thought they could help each other with their mental health struggles. They met, and after a short time they were officially a couple. When Molly told her mum Jo, she was pleased that Molly had found someone that made her happy, but had concerns when Molly explained to her that Josh was bipolar. Molly asked her not to judge, and I'm not one to judge either. In fact, I myself have bipolar 2 disorder, so I'm definitely not one to be raising an eyebrow to anyone with a mental illness, but I can understand where Molly's mum was coming from. She'd watched her daughter go through her own struggles and was worried that adding someone else's mental health issues to her own might be more than she could handle. But Molly really believed they could be good for each other, so her mum had to trust that she knew what she was doing. When Josh met Molly's mum and dad, he was quickly welcomed into their tight-knit family. After a short amount of time, Molly decided to introduce Josh to her friends. They were a huge part of her life, so of course she wanted them all to get along. Josh met up with Molly and her friend Alicia at the gym for a workout, but Alicia's first impression of Josh wasn't great. He was quiet and a bit awkward around her, and once they'd left, he started texting Molly, and these texts were quite obviously trying to get Molly offside with Alicia. He was trying to come between her and her friend, only hours after meeting her for the first time. This, in case you're wondering, is a red flag. Trying to isolate you or turn you against your friends and family is not a good thing at all. In April, Josh ran in the London Marathon, and Molly and her mum were there to watch him. He raised funds to support others with bipolar disorder. As things progressed with the relationship, Josh got more and more possessive and more manipulative. It was getting to the point where Josh was always around at Molly's. He spent most weekends there. He even spent Father's Day with Molly's dad, Doug, instead of his own father. Then there was something that the whole family found odd. Josh played local football on a Sunday and would never allow Molly to attend the games. Molly believed that he didn't want anyone seeing her. Whether this was to undermine her self-confidence or to keep her all to himself is not easy to determine, but either way, it's not exactly normal behaviour, and either reason is a red flag. This was concerning to Molly's parents. Why would he be excluding her from this part of his life? There was also the fact that Josh really didn't have any friends of his own. He just wanted to be with Molly. He wasn't interested in making any new friends or even being around Molly's friends. Molly's study commitments for uni were strenuous, and she would tell Josh that she was staying in to study, so she needed some time to herself, but he would turn up on her doorstep uninvited, or more to the point, despite being told that she wanted some time alone. This constant overstepping of boundaries is also a red flag. He was making it known by his actions that what he wanted was more important than what she wanted or needed. My flag is waving madly. Healthy boundaries are very important in any relationship, but it was like he wasn't even listening to her. Josh had to be with Molly at all times to be sure she was where she said she was. So while she was studying, he would just sit in her room for hours. He also didn't like not having Molly's undivided attention. Molly tried to make him understand. She sent him a text saying that they couldn't be together 24/7 and that she was feeling pressured, but this didn't dissuade Josh. When her uni summer holidays were approaching, Josh quit his job, obviously, knowing that Molly would have more free time and he'd be unable to be with her all the time that she had off if he was working. He just up and quit. Molly wanted him to be happy. She wanted to help and support him, so she spent a good deal of time helping him find a new job. But Josh didn't seem to want to help himself, and all the time spent trying to lift Josh up was wearing Molly down. This was when she decided it was time to take a break from the relationship. Now, even though she'd taken a step back from the relationship, there was a big family celebration in Essex that, despite Molly's reservations, Josh attended with them. Josh was obsessive this night about being with Molly all evening. He wanted her to sit with him at all times, and when she was up dancing with her cousins, he was sitting there just glaring at them, like willing her to come and sit back down with him. Her cousin, who hadn't met Josh before this night, told Molly's mum that she really didn't like him. She couldn't put a finger on it, but she just did not like this guy. When the family retired to their hotel rooms for the night, Molly texted her mum for help. When her mum went to their room, Josh was trying to thrust his phone into Joe's face. And when she asked Molly what was going on, she explained that Josh had been recording her. It was like he was trying to pick a fight and trying to record her reaction. She felt it was to have leverage over her. And this manipulative behaviour was the last straw for Molly. She was deflated and fed up. She had tried to do all that she could to make him feel secure in the relationship, but she was getting to the point that she just had enough. She told her mum that she just didn't feel the same way for him anymore and that he really wasn't the person for her. She really wasn't sure how to go about breaking up with Josh. She knew from the previous times that she'd tried to take a step back that he wasn't going to take it well. The couple had been fighting over Facebook Messenger all day before going out to celebrate Molly's 23rd birthday. And as much as Molly tried to let it go so she could enjoy her evening, Josh just wouldn't. And she looked around and all her friends were there. They were there to celebrate her. And they were all having a great time. And she's stuck in the corner arguing with this guy. And she just snapped. She ended the relationship. She told him that she couldn't do it anymore and that they were done. Josh made a scene, yelling, "She's finished with me," as he left the pub. Molly expressed her remorse to her friends. This definitely wasn't how she wanted things to go. She felt bad that it had been in a public place, and Josh definitely played on her guilt. Abusive people generally will manipulate their victims' sympathies to the point where they put the abuser's feelings above their own. But at the same time, Molly was pleased it was over. Josh was constantly calling and texting, though, asking for one more chance. But Molly had made up her mind. She knew that she'd made the right decision, breaking things off, and she felt that a weight had been lifted with the end of the relationship. Her friends noticed the change in her too. She was back to her smiley, fun-loving self. Molly threw herself back into her routine, but Josh set out on a smear campaign. He was posting abusive things all over social media. He was tagging her friends and parents in these things to make sure that they all saw them. He attacked her in the way that he knew would hurt her the most. She was building a career around fitness and well-being, so he began posting that she was using drugs. Molly blocked him on all her social media accounts, but the posts were relentless. After a few days of this torment, Molly and her mum Jo went to the police. The police told her to make sure he was blocked on every social media platform and to ask her friends to do the same. Molly had taken in a list of all the things that he'd been saying online, and the police looked him up on their system but found that they didn't have any sort of record on Josh. So all they could do was contact him and tell him to remove the posts. He was arrogant in this exchange and seemed completely unfazed by the fact that police were calling him at all, even when they warned him that he would be arrested if he persisted in this behaviour. Molly was still shaken by it all, and Jo was also worried, so they gave pictures of Josh to their neighbours to keep an eye out for him and asked them to let them know if they spotted him. Seeing as she had him blocked on all her social media, Molly posted her evening plans on Snapchat. She was headed out for dinner with her friends at Chatham Dockside. Molly and her friends were celebrating her enrolling in her PT course and another friend's new job. When halfway through their evening, Josh turned up at the pub they were at. It didn't feel right to any of the girls, but they couldn't work out how he could have known where they were. He was there with another girl, and Molly's friends were concerned that she would be upset by this, but she wasn't, which she just took as confirmation that she'd done the right thing in calling things off. She knew she didn't care about him that way and was relieved that he seemed to be moving on. She was still unnerved, though, as he walked past their table a number of times and was watching, so she decided to head home. When she came in earlier than her mum expected, Jo said, "You're back early. What happened?" And Molly replied, "You'll never guess," that he turned up at the place. Molly and Jo sat there and again tried to work out how he could have known where she was going to be, but they couldn't work it out. Molly tried to convince herself that it was a coincidence, but it turns out that it wasn't a chance encounter. Molly had taken every precaution. She'd done everything that you're told to do in a situation like this. She blocked him. She alerted her neighbours. She went to the police. But the following morning, on the 29th of June 2017, it just simply wasn't enough. Molly headed to the gym to record some workout videos for her uni course, but not long after her arrival, Josh turned up. He walked into the gym and set himself up right next to where she was working out. Molly freaked out, obviously, messaged Amy. She told her she was scared, and quite rightly. She was thinking this couldn't be a coincidence. Last night and again this morning, Molly was sus, as anyone would be. This guy was everywhere. She was seen going over to him on CCTV and engaging in a brief exchange where she asked if he was following her and why he wasn't at work, to which he apparently told her that really wasn't any of her business. So she walked away and packed up her things. Molly also called her mum, and both her mum and Amy told her not to approach him again and to go straight home. Molly waited for Josh to leave, and once she felt he'd had enough time to leave the area, she headed out of the gym and across the car park to her car. As soon as she got into the car, Josh came out of nowhere and attacked her. She was trapped in her car as he stabbed and slashed at her. Molly struggled and screamed while she blasted the horn and tried in vain to fight him off. A passerby tried to pull Josh off Molly. He tried slamming the car door on his legs, but he wasn't able to get him away from her. When the police arrived on scene, they found Josh covered in blood. He walked up to them, saying, "She's in the car. I've killed her." And he had. Molly was pronounced dead. It was found that he had stabbed her 75 times. Josh was taken into custody and charged with first-degree murder. Josh was put on trial at Maidstone Crown Court in Kent because, despite being found at the scene covered in blood and with the murder weapon in Molly's car, Josh decided to further torture the family by pleading not guilty to murder. He pleaded guilty to manslaughter, stating that at the time of the killing he was suffering from diminished responsibility. However, Judge Adele Williams said she was certain Stimson was not suffering from a personality disorder. Furthermore, after being assessed by both the prosecution and defense psychiatrist, it was found he also didn't have bipolar disorder. He had used this ruse as a way to connect with Molly through their seemingly shared mental health issues, and used this fabricated disorder, or his fabricated disorder, to not only explain away some of his more bizarre behaviour, but to elicit her empathy and have her worrying more about his feelings than her own. During the trial, it came out that Josh had been stalking another girl when he first started talking with Molly. This young lady had been to the police because Josh had threatened to come to where she was on holidays and drown her. And she'd also had her tyres slashed. Yet another girl came forward to give evidence. She hadn't gone to the police but had trouble with Josh after they'd been out on only one date. Police had also found out how Josh had been able to track Molly's whereabouts. It turned out that he had met a woman who fancied herself a bit of a hacker cum stalker, and she had told Josh that they would stalk Molly together. She'd sent Molly a friend request, so she was able to see all her posts, and she was feeding the information back to Josh. The thing that no one in the court could really understand or believe was, despite the fact that she was in court for the devastating after effects of her handiwork, she seemed smug and quite pleased with herself. In any case, Josh put Molly's poor family through this further hell for nothing, because it took the jury less than 4 hours to find him guilty, and he was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 26 years. During the court proceedings, Judge Williams told Josh that this was a cruel, calculated and cowardly act, that this was an act of wickedness. You took away Molly's life quite deliberately in the most vicious fashion. You were determined to punish her for ending the relationship with you. You were seeking revenge. She was 23 years old, beautiful and intelligent. Her family's grief and anguish is raw and apparent for everyone to see. She continued, "You are a highly dangerous young man, and you will pose a very considerable risk to women for a very considerable period in the future." Molly was laid to rest on the 21st of August 2017, and attendees were asked to wear bright coloured clothes or gym clothes, and in lieu of buying flowers, they were asked to donate to the Molly McLaren Foundation. Those who loved Molly were determined her death would not be in vain, and have set up the foundation in her memory to raise awareness and distribute money to charities that support people with eating disorders. I'll leave the link to the foundation in the show notes and description box. Benjamin Morton, the man who tried to save Molly, was presented with a special commendation by the High Sheriff of Kent, George Jessel, during a ceremony at Maidstone Crown Court. Molly's parents, Joe and Doug, were also at the presentation. It was the first time they'd all met. Mr. Morton was awarded £500 for his courage in his repeated attempts to save Molly's life, and then for stopping her killer from escaping. Judge Adele Williams said, "Benjamin Morton is to be commended for his brave and bold actions. He behaved as we all wish we would do in such circumstances." At present, at least 2 women a week in the UK are killed by their partner or ex-partner, and in 94% of these cases, there's been a noted element of stalking behaviour. Since Molly's murder, Staffordshire Police have changed their policy on reports of stalking. This means officers are now required to record stalking as a crime, even if victims don't want to take matters further, in order to prevent tragedies like this from occurring ever again. Because if they had taken reports of the prior incidents and had them on file when Molly and her mum went to the police about Josh, his history would have come up, and it may have been an indication of the escalating behaviour, and it could have made the difference in making everyone more aware of the danger he posed. This case is so tragic. A 7-month relationship should not cost a person their life. Molly had so much life to live, and it was stolen all because a selfish person, couldn't accept that she wanted to move on and live it. Anyway, that is all I have for you today on this case, my friends. If the content of this case has raised any concerns for you in regards to your own relationship or that of a loved one, please reach out for help. There is a list of resources in the show notes and description box below. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please don't forget to like and subscribe, rate and review, and drop a comment below for my friends watching on YouTube. Let's also continue the discussion over on social media. Join us on Twitter at LoveTrapPod or Instagram at Surviving the Love Bomb. Trapped by Love is a Surviving the Love Bomb production. If you'd like more information about recognizing abusive relationships, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel, Surviving the Love Bomb. You can also watch these podcasts on the Trapped by Love YouTube channel. I believe this is a really important topic that needs more exposure so we can all stay safe from abusive relationships. Again, that's all I have for you. Thank you for joining me this week, and until next time, please take care of yourselves and be kind to one another.